G'day guys, how's it going? I thought I'd make a quick video about how I go about maintaining a super sharp chisel without having to mess around and putting them back onto my stones here. Like, the last thing I want to be doing is getting oil and water all over my chisels constantly, and then it goes all over my hands, and then it eventually goes all over my workpiece. I don't want to do that if I can avoid it. And I certainly don't want to have to go to the trouble of putting a chisel onto my coarse stone, my medium stone, my fine stone, my super fine stone, my super fine stone. Seems like a lot of work, right? So instead, once your chisel's somewhat sharp, the backs have been flattened and it's pretty sharp, but you've been using it a bit, and you can feel that it's actually becoming dull. Now when I say you can feel that it's becoming dull, because it's a chisel, you're doing a lot of paring work, you're doing a lot of work with your own muscle, so you can actually feel the increase in resistance from the use of the chisel. So in order to maintain the edge, I just use a strop. So my strop here, it's a bit of 12mm MDF with a bit of kangaroo leather applied to it using some spray adhesive. Now the kangaroo leather, it's about 1mm thick, and it doesn't have to be kangaroo leather. I've just got kangaroo leather because I'm Australian and it falls off the trees around here. It's actually only a joke, don't take me seriously. But you could just use horse butt leather or cow leather or an old leather jacket, old leather boots, whatever you've got, leather of some sort. Now, I like using leather because it slightly compresses when you put a chisel into it. And so it will, because of the compression in the leather, it will round out that edge just a little bit. I personally don't think that's a problem. Some people really hate it, but that's their problem. But it doesn't matter too much. But what that also means is because it's conforming to the edge, you don't have to find that bevel exactly perfectly, because the leather will round out a little bit and wrap around, and it'll actually hit that edge as you're stropping. So I've got a dowel in the end of my strop here, so I can put it into one of these dog holes right there, and that holds it in position there. From there I can find my bevel. It's right there. I can't actually hold it with because the handle is a bit too heavy, so I actually need two hands to do it. But on my left hand here, I'll put all the pressure down on the edge of the timber or edge of the chisel, and my right hand simply holds the weight of this chisel. And I do try to maintain that bevel as best I can, but if I was to roll up a little bit further, it's not the end of the world. What I'm actually doing is increasing the sharpening angle, and from there I'd have to go back and put it onto the stones and re-establish approximately a 30-degree bevel. You could go 25 degrees. I personally use about 30 degrees, and I'll resharpen on the stones if this ever gets up to about 35 degrees. But at the moment, that's actually pretty sharp, actually almost cut me. And so I don't need to do a lot of work to it, but it's not as sharp as what I could be. So I'm just going to strop it, and this will re-establish the bevel, or re-establish the sharpness of the chisel without having to go to the trouble of putting it onto my coarse stone, my medium stone, my fine stone, my super fine stone, or my super fine stone. So a couple of swipes like that, and I do put the backs of my chisels onto my strops. A lot of people don't like that because it does round out the back of your chisels. Me personally, I don't do a lot of true paring across a surface, so it doesn't really matter if these chisel backs are dead perfect, but they're pretty close anyway. So I'll do that a couple of times. I'm actually sharpening this chisel, no different to what I'd be doing is if I was on a stone here. I'm not actually going to do it, but I could drag that back, and I'm actually removing material. These diamond stones, this 400 grit diamond stone, would remove a lot more material than this chromium oxide impregnated strop. That's a chromium oxide crayon. The chromium oxide acts as a slight abrasive, no different to the diamonds in this diamond stone, and it will actually remove some of the material at a much slower pace, at a much finer pace. But it's removing material nonetheless, and that's how we're able to maintain the edge. So I might do the bevel a couple of times, and then I'll do the back a couple of times, just so that there's any burr there, it gets folded off and gets removed. Now this chisel here, I haven't put this chisel back onto these stones here for the best part of 8 or 9 months. Basically, I chop, chop, strop, strop, chop, chop, strop, strop. And by doing that, I maintain a sharp chisel, and it's always sharp. Like, I'll just keep this strop on my bench and I'll be chopping a little bit. It gets a little bit hard, the resistance increases a little bit too much. I'll put it back on the strop and I'm good to go again. So from here, yeah, I can feel that that's deadly sharp again. So if I just give you the old arm hair test, I hate doing this, but it is what it is. You can see that it's got a whole bunch of hair coming straight off my arm, and that was just off a strop, keeping in mind that the chisel was already fairly sharp, it just wasn't deadly sharp. So long as you maintain it, it becomes very easy to maintain the chisels. You don't have to put them onto your diamond stones or water stones ever again, pretty much, like every year at least. So that's how I go about it, and we'll give them a quick test and we'll see how good we've done. Nice and easily, we'll just pare across this surface as best I can. Oh, I broke it. That's what I get for planing off the edge of the timber. But you can see, it's actually super sharp just from the strop. Try to get it started again. Not too bad. So now this works with a strop on a chisel pretty good, but it doesn't work so well on a hand plane. The reason why you can't use a strop to sharpen your hand plane irons, well, technically you can do it, it'd just be a lot of work. But primarily, the hand plane iron will do a hell of a lot more physical work, more cutting action before you're even willing to sharpen it. Whereas a chisel, because it's so easy just to maintain that edge, I might literally chisel this one, and chisel this dovetail, so 3 dovetails, and they're only about this long. So I've only actually done that much worth of cutting action, and then I've decided, it's getting a little bit blunt, I'll maintain the edge on the strop, because I don't have to take anything apart, it's already in my hands, all I have to do is just, and I'm done, good to go, and I can do the next 3. But if I was to smooth plane this surface here with my hand plane, I might have to go across that surface 3 times. It's 500 millimeters wide, 700 millimeters long, and I might have to do 1, 2, 3, probably about 13 passes to get across the full width, times 3 passes to make it smooth, make it beautiful, by 700 millimeters long. So let's say that's about 30 meters of cutting action, and that's only one panel. Well, I'll be able to do more than one panel, so I might do 3 or 4 different panels before I sharpen this. So 30 meters times 3 or 4, that's 90 to 120 meters of cutting action. So by the time I'm ready to say, look, it's getting a little bit dull, it's time to take it apart and sharpen it, this will have done 120 meters worth of cutting action, as opposed to this chisel doing about that much worth of cutting action, like 300 millimeters, 0.3 of a meter of cutting action. So there's a big difference. So you won't be able to take this cutter from the plane and put it onto your strop, because you're going to have to remove more material from your plane iron to get it sharp. So you have to put your plane irons back onto your stones every single time. I don't even argue it, I just do it. Whereas with your chisels, you don't have to put the chisel onto your stones ever again, almost. Every year or 2, put them onto your stones, happy days. So, with that said, give a strop a go and thank me later. Catches.